Lieutenant Amanda Cooper drummed her fingers against the command chair's armrest, matching the rhythm of her racing heart. The holographic display before her showed 3 Scatheri raiders closing in on her small fleet's position near Alpha Centauri. Her ship, the U.S. Nightingale, hung in the void alongside its sister vessels, the Starcatcher and the Dawnbreak. "They're pushing into colonial shipping lanes again," her XO, Marcus Rodriguez, reported from the tactical station. His voice carried the same tight anticipation they'd all felt since detecting the alien signatures 20 minutes ago. Amanda straightened in her chair. "All hands, battle stations." She activated the fleet-wide comm. "Nightingale to battle group. Form up on my mark. Standard defense pattern Delta." As klaxons sounded throughout the ships, something beautiful happened, something that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. It started in engineering, where Chief Emily Roberts always led her team in Blood Upon the Risers during combat prep. The old paratrooper's song echoed through the decks as more crew members joined in. "Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die." The harmonies spread through all 3 ships, each crew adding their own variations. On the Starcatcher, they preferred "The Army Goes Rolling Along," while the Dawnbreak's crew had launched into "Anchors Away." The result was a strange but stirring chorus of humanity's oldest battle traditions. Amanda smiled, her own voice joining the melody as she issued combat orders. The songs helped steady nerves, maintained unit cohesion, and honestly, it just felt right. Some traditions never died, even in the space age. The Scatheri ships closed to weapons range. Their crystalline vessels glinted in the starlight, beautiful and deadly. Amanda noticed something odd about their approach. They were hesitating. "Man," her sensor officer, Lieutenant Sarah Reeves, called out, "I'm picking up some weird scanning patterns from the raiders. They're focusing on our comm frequencies." The enemy vessels had indeed slowed their advance. Amanda could almost imagine their confusion. The Scatheri were known for their rigid combat protocols and emotional suppression during battle. What must they make of their sensors showing humans actually singing while preparing to fight? "They're in range," Rodriguez reported, his voice carrying the melody of the song even as he called out tactical data. "Reading weapons charge on all 3 vessels. Target their propulsion systems," Amanda ordered, her words fitting naturally between verses. "Let's show them how Earth's Navy handles raiders. All ships, on my mark." The Scatheri finally launched their attack. Particle beams lanced out, but their timing was off. Way off. Amanda had studied their typical attack patterns, and this was sloppy, almost hesitant. "Return fire." The order came out as part of the chorus, and her crews responded with practiced precision. Despite, or perhaps because of, their continuing song, every shot found its mark. The Nightingale's main guns lit up the darkness, followed immediately by broadsides from her sister ships. The first Scatheri raiders' shields buckled under the assault. The other 2 ships broke formation, their movements awkward and uncoordinated. Amanda hadn't expected such an easy fight from the normally disciplined raiders. "They're broadcasting something," Reeves announced. I think they're trying to understand our combat songs. Their sensors are going crazy analyzing our crew's neural patterns." Amanda allowed herself a grin. "Give them something to really think about." All ships switched to the battle hymn of the Republic. Full volume on all frequencies. The combined crews shifted seamlessly into the iconic melody, their voices carried by comm systems into the void. The effect on the Scatheri was immediate and dramatic. Their remaining ships pulled back, their formation completely falling apart. "Glory, glory, hallelujah," thundered through space as the human ships pressed their advantage. Within minutes, 1 raider had fled, another had surrendered, and the 3rd drifted powerless, its engines dark. In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and the adrenaline faded, Amanda received a peculiar transmission from the surrendered Scatheri vessel. Translated, it read, "Query: How do your neural patterns maintain combat efficiency while engaging in recreational sound generation. Secondary query: what is a hell of a way to die, and why does it generate positive emotional readings during battle? Amanda laughed, the sound mixing with the dying echoes of songs still reverberating through her ship. She had a feeling this was going to be an interesting first contact report to write. Dr. James Mitchell stared at his reflection in the polished crystalline walls of the Sktheri research vessel Harmony Seeker, wondering how exactly he'd ended up here. One day he was giving a lecture on the evolution of military music at the University of Chicago, and the next he was being cordially compelled to assist alien researchers in understanding humanity's peculiar combat behaviors. Respected Dr. Mitchell, lead researcher Valthek's translator hummed. Please demonstrate again the concept of cadence calling while operating basic weapon systems. The Sktheri scientists' three eyes blinked in sequence, their species equivalent of intense concentration. Behind the observation window, a panel of researchers adjusted their neural monitoring equipment. You know, Mitchell said, stepping onto the treadmill they'd set up next to a standard targeting system. Traditionally, we do this in groups. Groups increase neural complexity beyond our current measurement capabilities, Valthek replied. Single subject analysis first. Please proceed with the rhythmic vocal combat enhancement. Mitchell sighed, started jogging, and launched into one of the classics, Up in the Morning to the Rising Sun. Gonna run all day till the running's done. The targeting system activated, presenting holographic threats. As Mitchell maintained the cadence, he picked off targets with the training weapon. The Sktheri observation room erupted in a flurry of activity. Impossible readings. Junior researcher Zelna called out, her crystalline appendages clicking rapidly across her instruments. Subject maintains 82% accuracy, while dedicating 43% of neural capacity to sound generation and rhythm maintenance. Furthermore, Valthek added, endorphin production increases with vocal pattern complexity. Curious, most curious. Mitchell switched seamlessly into C-130 rolling down the strip, increasing his pace. The targeting system adjusted accordingly, and his accuracy actually improved. He'd spent months trying to explain this phenomenon to his academic colleagues, how the rhythm of military cadences could enhance performance rather than divide attention. The Sktheri had brought in examples of their own combat training, all conducted in complete silence with intense focus. Their species believed that any extraneous neural activity during combat preparation was wasteful at best, dangerous at worst. Yet here was Mitchell, literally singing and shooting, and outperforming their baseline expectations. Now, Mitchell called out between verses, imagine an entire platoon doing this in sync. Valthek's head crystals flickered, their version of a shudder. We have reviewed the historical footage. Viking berserkers charging into battle singing of Valhalla, Greek triremes timing their ramming attacks to drum beats, human space marines conducting zero-gravity operations while chanting about some entity named Jodi. Mitchell couldn't help but laugh, nearly missing a target. And don't forget the psychological warfare aspect. Nothing quite like hearing several hundred Marines singing "Blood makes the grass grow" to unnerve your opponent. The observation room went silent. Finally, Zelna spoke up. You generate intimidating sound patterns to decrease enemy combat effectiveness, while simultaneously increasing your own coordination. That's barely scratching the surface, Mitchell said, shutting down the targeting system and wiping his brow. Ever heard of the Battle of Agincourt? The English longbowmen singing Non Nobis Domine after their victory. Music isn't just about combat enhancement. It's how we process the entire experience of warfare. The researchers huddled together, their crystalline bodies creating a soft chiming sound as they consulted. Mitchell took the opportunity to catch his breath. He'd been through dozens of these demonstrations over the past week, each more elaborate than the last. We have reached a consensus, Valthek announced. Your species requires further study. We are particularly interested in the phenomenon you call sea shanties and their role in maintaining crew efficiency during space combat. Mitchell's eyes lit up. Well, if you really want to understand that, we're going to need more people, and possibly some cargo to haul around. Ever heard, what do you do with a drunken sailor? The Scatheri researchers logged that as the exact moment their study took an unexpected turn. Within hours, the Harmony Seeker's cargo bay had been converted into a makeshift replica of an old sailing vessel's deck, complete with lines and cargo nets. The sound of humans teaching aliens to sing "Roll the Old Chariot Along" would soon echo through its halls, marking the beginning of one of the strangest cultural exchange programs in human history. Captain Michael Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Stormfront, watching his crew perform their 20th shield synchronization test of the day. The joint human Scatheri training exercise had been going for 3 weeks now, and something wasn't adding up in the performance metrics. "Run it again," he ordered, leaning forward to study the holographic readouts. Same parameters as before. His shield technician, Lieutenant Rebecca Nash, nodded and began the sequence. As she worked, she unconsciously started humming Seven Nation Army, its distinctive bass line too catchy to resist. Other crew members picked up the tune, a common occurrence during long shifts. The Scatheri observer, Chief Scientist Valthek, tilted his crystalline head. "Captain Hayes, your crew is doing it again. The synchronized sound generation during critical operations." "Sorry about that," Hayes began, but stopped as he noticed something on the readings. "Lieutenant Nash, what's our shield harmony rating?" 97%, sir," she reported, then double-checked the number in surprise. That's 12 points higher than our last run." Hayes straightened up. "Valthek, did you catch that?" The alien scientist was already moving to the sensor station, his crystalline appendages clicking rapidly across the controls. "Fascinating. The shield frequency is perfectly matched with your crew's vocal harmonics. But that should be impossible. Shield synchronization requires precise mathematical focus." "Play back the last 3 tests," Hayes ordered. Split screen with crew audio overlaid. The data appeared before them. Test after test showed the same pattern. When the crew naturally fell into singing or humming together, shield performance spiked. When they worked in silence, trying to match the Scatheri's preferred method of operation, the numbers dropped. "Lieutenant Nash," Hayes called out, an idea forming. "That song you were humming. Do you know the frequency?" "Seven Nation Army. It's got a bass line that hits around 55 hertz, sir." She paused. "Which is exactly 1/3 of our shield's resonance frequency." Valthek's crystals began glowing with excitement. "Quantum harmonic resonance. Your crews aren't just making noise. They're unconsciously matching their ship's natural frequencies." Hayes tapped his comm. "Engineering, this is the bridge. Chief Watson, you still got that old guitar down there?" "Never go anywhere without it, sir," came the reply. "Get up here. And bring Dr. Mitchell from the Scatheri science team. We're going to try something." 20 minutes later, Chief Watson had his acoustic guitar out on the bridge, while Dr. Mitchell watched with growing interest. Valthek and his team had set up additional sensors around the command center. "All right, people," Hayes addressed his crew. "Let's try something structured. Seven Nation Army. Full participation, focused on shield harmonics. Chief Watson, give us a beat." The familiar riff filled the bridge. One by one, crew members joined in, their voices merging into a powerful chorus. Lieutenant Nash kept her eyes on the shield readings as she sang. "Sir," she called out, voice rising with excitement. "Shield strength up 15%. Harmony rating at 103%. We're exceeding theoretical maximums." Valthek was practically vibrating with excitement. "The quantum field, it's responding to the collective neural patterns of your crew. When you synchronize through music, you're not just coordinating your actions, you're literally harmonizing with your ship's systems." Dr. Mitchell stepped forward, his academic curiosity fully engaged. "It's not just about the frequency matching. Human brains process music through multiple pathways simultaneously. We're not dividing our attention. We're multiplying it. Hayes watched as the shield bubble around his ship pulsed in perfect rhythm with his crew's song. Years of spacers' superstitions about ships responding to their crews suddenly made scientific sense. They weren't just operating their vessels. They were singing in harmony with them. "Send the data to Fleet Command," Hayes ordered. "And get me Lieutenant Cooper from the Nightingale. She needs to know her singing raiders weren't just rattled by our voices. Their ships were being affected on a quantum level." As the crew celebrated their discovery, Valthek made a final note in his research log. Human capacity for musical warfare may be more than cultural. Evidence suggests evolutionary adaptation for harmonic resonance with technology. Further study required. Also, requesting personal audio device to further analyze this 7-nation army. For scientific purposes only. Governor Rachel Martinez stood in New Nashville's Colonial Defense Center, watching as red warning signals blazed across the holographic display. The Nexus Collective's warships had appeared without warning, their sleek, geometric forms breaking through the cloud cover like angry metallic wasps. "They're jamming all standard frequencies," Colonel Jack Thompson reported, his fingers dancing across the tactical console. 6 capital ships, at least 20 support vessels. They're not even bothering to hide their approach vectors. Martinez's jaw tightened. New Nashville was supposed to be safe, too far from the border conflicts to need a full military presence. Their defense force consisted of a handful of patrol boats and the colony's pride and joy. The massive broadcasting arrays that made New Nashville the music capital of human space. "Get me Samuel Hayes at the Grand Ole Opera House," she ordered. "And patch me through to whatever emergency channels are still working." The Nexus Collective's first transmission cut through their communications like a knife. "Organic Settlement, New Nashville. Your defense capabilities have been calculated. Resistance is inefficient. Surrender and accept integration." Martinez allowed herself a small smile. They really didn't listen to the Skthari's warnings, did they? She activated her comm. "Sam, tell me you've got those arrays warmed up." "Yes, ma'am," the Opera House's chief engineer responded. "All 37 broadcast towers are hot, but they're meant for broadcasting music across light years. Not today they're weapons," Martinez interrupted. "Colonel Thompson, get me every musician in the colony. I want them at their instruments and ready to play. And someone find me Carson Wade. His cover of Fortunate Son just became our battle hymn." The Nexus ships descended through the atmosphere, their weapons charging. They expected token resistance at best. Their calculations showed a 99.97% chance of victory against such a lightly defended target. They weren't prepared for what happened next. Carson Wade's voice boomed from every broadcasting array in the colony, the famous opening riffs of Fortunate Son, amplified to frequencies that made the air itself vibrate. The collective's sensors registered the sound waves as weapons-grade energy emissions, forcing their shields to adjust. "All arrays, full power," Martinez ordered. "Everyone with an instrument or a voice, join in. Colonel, target their shield frequencies." The colony's inhabitants, many of them descendants of Earth's greatest musicians, needed no further encouragement. The Grand Ole Opera House became a command center as guitarists, drummers, and singers poured in. Each broadcasting array was quickly manned by musicians, their instruments plugged directly into the amplification systems. The first Nexus ship that tried to fire found its targeting systems scrambled by perfectly harmonized waves of sound. Their logical processors struggled to compensate for what they perceived as impossible. Weapons fire that carried the patterns of music. "They're breaking formation," Thompson called out, grinning as the enemy ships scattered. "Their predictive combat algorithms can't handle the variables." The music swelled as more colonists joined in, decades of research into sonic amplification finding an unexpected military application. The collected ships fought against shield disruptions as country music literally shook their hulls. A second Nexus transmission cut through. "Error. Error. Combat parameters exceed logical bounds. Organic sound generation achieving impossible resonance patterns." Martinez grabbed the comm. "This is Governor Martinez to all citizens of New Nashville. They thought we were an easy target because we didn't have a proper military base. Let's show them what happens when you threaten a colony of musicians." The response was a wall of sound that would have made Phil Spector weep with joy. Every genre of music humanity had ever created poured from the arrays. Country, rock, classical, jazz, all harmonizing into a weapon that the collective's logic engines couldn't process. 3 Nexus ships crashed, their navigation systems overwhelmed. 2 more retreated to orbit, their shields fluctuating wildly. The last capital ship hung in the air, its systems locked in a feedback loop as it tried to comprehend how primitives with musical instruments had defeated their superior technology. As the dust settled and the last notes of "Fortunate Son" echoed across the battlefield, Martinez received an urgent transmission from Earth Command. "Hold position," it read. "This Nightingale Battle Group en route. And Governor, the Skthuri are requesting copies of your defense system schematics. They're particularly interested in something called a guitar solo." Colonel Jessica Barnes watched the final diagnostic cycle on her fleet's new harmonic resonance amplification device, HRAD. The massive crystalline structure, retrofitted into the belly of her flagship Thunderchild, pulsed with a soft blue light that matched the crew's practiced breathing patterns. All ships reporting HRAD systems at full power, Lieutenant Commander David Chen announced from his station. Harmonic sync holding at 98% across the battle group. Barnes nodded, her fingers unconsciously tapping out the rhythm they'd been practicing for weeks. After the New Nashville incident, Fleet Command had fast-tracked Dr. Mitchell's research into weaponized harmonics. The result was the most powerful integration of human music and military technology ever created. "Status of the Nexus fleet?" she asked, eyes fixed on the tactical display. 23 ships, maintaining attack formation," Chen reported. "They've adapted their shields since New Nashville. Standard sonic attacks won't work this time." Barnes smiled. "Good thing we're not planning anything standard. All ships, battle stations, core units to your positions." Throughout the fleet, specialized chambers activated. Inside each one, a carefully selected group of singers took their places around miniature versions of the main HRAD crystal. These weren't just any singers, they were combat veterans trained in the new harmonic warfare protocols. "Remember your training," Barnes broadcast to all ships. "Match your rhythms to your ship's resonance. Feel the harmony between crew, crystal, and combat, just like in practice." The Nexus Collective's ships approached with mathematical precision. Their new shield configurations were designed to counter any possible variation of the sound-based weapons they'd encountered. Their combat computers had run billions of simulations, accounting for every known human musical pattern. "They're in range," Chen reported, reading shield adaptations across their fleet. Barnes took a deep breath and pressed the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, all core units, begin protocol harmony." It started as a low hum, the sound of hundreds of human voices finding the same note. The HRAD crystals began to pulse faster, matching the neural patterns of the singers. Then the melody emerged, an ancient hymn chosen for its mathematical perfection, its ability to resonate with both human minds and crystalline structures. "Die Zera." Barnes whispered the name of their chosen battle song. The Day of Wrath turned into a weapon of war. The Nexus ships faltered. Their sensors detected something impossible, a harmony that existed in both physical and quantum states simultaneously. The human voices, amplified and focused through the HRAD crystals, weren't just producing sound waves. They were creating patterns in space-time itself. "Enemy shields fluctuating," Chen called out. "They can't adapt to the quantum resonance." Barnes watched as the first Nexus ship shields collapsed completely, its logical circuits overwhelmed by a weapon that defied their understanding of physics. The ship's computer core attempted to compensate by redirecting power, but the harmonics had already penetrated its systems. "All ships, Phase 2, Barnes ordered. "Switch to battle hymn configuration." The choirs shifted seamlessly into Battle Hymn of the Republic, its powerful rhythms perfectly synchronized across the fleet. The HFY crystals pulsed with renewed energy, turning the ancient song into a cascade of quantum disruptions that ripple through space. 3 more Nexus ships lost shield power. Their formation broke as the machines tried desperately to compute a defense against music itself. But how could they calculate countermeasures against human souls expressing centuries of martial tradition through technology they barely understood? Enemy fleet attempting emergency withdrawal, Chen reported, his voice rising with excitement. Their targeting systems are completely scrambled. Barnes watched as the mighty Nexus battle fleet retreated in disarray. The same machines that had dismissed human singing as irrelevant were now fleeing from its ultimate expression. "Secure from battle stations," she ordered. "But keep the choirs going. I want these machines to remember the sound of human victory." As the adrenaline faded, Barnes received a message from Fleet Command. Dr. Mitchell and his Cathari colleagues had monitored the entire battle. Their preliminary analysis suggested that human harmonic warfare had just rewritten the laws of physics, or perhaps had finally revealed how music had been woven into the fabric of space all along, waiting for humanity to discover its true potential. Dr. Thomas Walker stared at the holographic brain scan floating above his desk in the Luna Base Research Center, his coffee long forgotten and cold. The neural pathway visualization pulsed with activity, each flash representing the mind of a combat singer during the recent battle. "Play it again," he told his research partner, Dr. Emily Sullivan. "Focus on the temporal lobe activity during the harmonic convergence." The hologram reset, showing the initial stages of the battle. As the core units began their song, specific regions of the brain lit up in perfect synchronization, not just within individual minds, but across the entire battle group. "It's like watching a symphony orchestra," Emily said, adjusting the display. "But instead of instruments, they're playing their own neurons." The door slid open, admitting Valthik and his team of Cathari researchers. Their crystalline forms caught the light from the brain scans, creating prismatic patterns across the laboratory walls. "Dr. Walker," Valthik greeted, his translator humming with excitement. "We've completed our analysis of the quantum resonance patterns from the HRAD systems. They match your neural mapping with a correlation of 99.97%. Walker nodded, adding another data stream to the hologram. "Look at this," he pointed to a particular cluster of neural pathways. "In every other known species, combat activities and musical processing occur in completely separate regions of the brain. But humans, we use the same neural pathways for both," Emily finished, highlighting the overlapping patterns. "It's not just simultaneous processing, it's synergistic enhancement." The laboratory's main screen filled with comparison data. Cathari brain showed clear segregation between combat functions and any other activity. The Nexus Collective's artificial neural networks were even more rigidly compartmentalized. But human brains created complex feedback loops, each activity strengthening the other. "Your species evolved to process rhythm and warfare through the same cognitive channels," Valthik observed, his crystals flickering with understanding. "This is why our early attempts to replicate your battle songs failed. We tried to add music to combat. When for humans, they're fundamentally the same thing." Walker completed the thought. He pulled up historical data streams. "Look at these readings from ancient war dances, modern military drills, space combat exercises. The neural patterns are identical. We've been unconsciously training this ability for our entire history." Emily enhanced a particular section of the scan. "The really fascinating part is how it scales. Individual singers show the pattern, but when you put them in groups," she overlaid data from the core units, "the effect multiplies exponentially. Each voice adds to the harmony. Each mind reinforces the neural synchronization." "And the HRAD crystals?" Valthik asked, his own research team gathering around the display. Walker grinned, adding the final data stream. "They don't just amplify the sound. They amplify the neural resonance itself. The crystals sync with our brainwaves, creating a quantum field that matches the harmony of our combined consciousness. That's why the Nexus Collective's predictive AI failed so catastrophically. They were trying to counter sound waves, Emily explained, when they should have been trying to counter synchronized human consciousness expressed through quantum harmonics. The laboratory fell silent as the implications sank in. On the main screen, the visualization showed waves of neural activity flowing through human minds, into the HFY crystals, and out into space itself, a perfect symphony of biology, technology, and quantum physics. "We're going to need to update some fundamental laws of physics," Walker said, already drafting notes for his report. "Apparently, the universe itself has a rhythm, and humanity evolved to sing along with it." Valthic's crystalline form shimmered with what the humans had learned to recognize as awe. "Your ships don't just carry weapons," he said softly. "They carry choirs of consciousness, harmonizing with reality itself." As if to punctuate his observation, a distant song echoed through Luna Base's corridors. The night shift crews running combat drills, their voices carrying the same patterns they'd just observed in the lab. Science had finally explained what human warriors had known instinctively for millennia. In the dance between battle and song, humanity had found its greatest strength. Earth's orbital defense grid lit up like a Christmas tree as the largest Nexus Collective fleet ever recorded dropped out of faster-than-light travel. 500 ships, their geometric forms blocking out the stars, arranged themselves in a perfect attack formation. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, watching the enemy armada through the main viewport. Behind her, representatives from every major human culture prepared their core units for what might be humanity's last stand. "They've adapted their shields again," Lieutenant James Rodriguez reported from Tactical. "New frequency patterns, rotating algorithms. They're ready for the HFY this time." Chen smiled. "But they're not ready for what we're about to show them." She opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, all stations, begin Operation Global Harmony." Across the combined human fleet, core chambers hummed to life. But these weren't the standardized units from the previous battles. Each ship now carried singers from different cultures, their voices ready to demonstrate humanity's full musical spectrum. "First wave, commence," Chen commanded. The Chinese battleship Dragon's Pearl led with an ancient war. The grand amphitheater of New Harmony Station hummed with anticipation as Dr. James Mitchell adjusted his formal uniform. Below him, the first graduating class of the Interspecies Combat Choir Academy prepared for their demonstration performance. "Never thought I'd see the day," Admiral Sarah Chen said, joining him in the observation booth. "Sktheri trying to sing. The Army goes rolling along while maintaining combat stance." Mitchell chuckled, watching the crystalline forms of their alien allies arrange themselves into choir formation. "They're actually getting better at it. Though I still haven't figured out how to explain the concept of cadence calling to species without lungs." The amphitheater's seats were filled with diplomats and military officers from dozens of species. After the Battle of Earth, the galaxy had realized that humanity's musical warfare wasn't just a curiosity. It was a revolutionary approach to combat that demanded study. "Beginning graduation demonstration," announced Choir Master Elizabeth Parker. First movement, traditional human battle songs. The Sktheri students began their performance, their crystalline bodies vibrating in careful approximation of human vocal patterns. The result was somewhere between wind chimes and a slightly off-key brass band, but the effort was remarkable. "Remember their first attempts?" Chen smiled, recalling the early days of the program, when they tried to process our musical traditions through pure mathematics. Mitchell nodded, watching as the alien choir moved through a medley of military songs from Earth's various cultures. "They've learned that some things can't be reduced to numbers. Sometimes you have to feel the rhythm." The performance continued with demonstrations of the new combined resonance combat system. Human voices joined with Sktheri crystal harmonics, creating patterns of sound that could synchronize ship systems across an entire fleet. It wasn't just warfare anymore. It was a new form of communication between species. In the front row, Valthek sat with his research team, their crystals pulsing proudly as they watched their students perform. The paper he and Mitchell had published, Quantum Harmonic Combat Theory, a new understanding of consciousness and reality, had revolutionized both military science and physics. The demonstration reached its crescendo as human and Scatheri voices joined in a newly composed piece, the Symphony of Stars, written specifically for cross-species performance. The HRID crystals throughout the station pulsed in harmony, creating a light show that matched the music's intensity. Incoming transmission from the Nexus Collective diplomatic vessel. An aide whispered to Chen. After their defeat at Earth, the machines had begun a fascinating evolution. Their attempt to understand human musical warfare had led them to explore concepts like creativity and improvisation. They're requesting permission to join next year's training program, Chen told Mitchell. Apparently, they've developed new quantum processors specifically for analyzing musical patterns. They want to understand how harmony works. Mitchell watched as the graduation ceremony concluded with a rendition of Anchors Away that made the station's structural crystals resonate in sympathy. From enemies to students, who would have thought our singing would change the galaxy this much? The applause was thunderous, or as thunderous as it could be in a room half filled with crystalline beings who showed appreciation through light pulses. As the ceremony ended, Mitchell found himself surrounded by eager alien students asking questions about human musical traditions. Dr. Mitchell, a young Scatheri cadet approached, crystals flickering nervously. I've been practicing what you called a guitar solo for my combat enhancement sequences. Would you review my technique? Mitchell smiled, remembering his first demonstrations aboard the Harmony Seeker that seemed so long ago. Of course, cadet. Though I should warn you, next semester we're covering something called freestyle rap battle techniques. That's when things get really interesting. As he watched humans and aliens mingling, sharing songs and stories, Mitchell realized they'd created something far more powerful than a weapon. They'd found a way to share the uniquely human experience of music with the galaxy, turning an art of war into a bridge between species. The Universal Choir Academy became known across the galaxy not just as a military institution, but as a symbol of how humanity's strange habit of singing in battle had opened new possibilities for all species. And if you listen carefully on quiet nights aboard New Harmony Station, you might hear the sound of Scatheri cadets practicing their scales, preparing to learn the next human song that would change their understanding of the universe.